Hello, welcome back. And today, I don't do reviews very often, but sometimes I do. And I did ask people if they wanted me to review some of the new books coming out from Wizards of the Coast, and I gave them the option. It could be the Player's Handbook, it could be the Dungeon Master Guide, it could be the Monster Manual. And the overwhelming response was, we would like you to talk about the Player's Handbook for 2024. So that is what I'm going to do today. I'm going to put up a poll. Feel free to take part in that poll if you want to. I have every intentions of being as objective and honest in my opinion as possible. So I suggest getting some food, some drink, make sure you're comfortable, and we'll get into this in a second. So that, I don't expect this to take me a long time. I think about an hour is at probably the most that I will actually spend covering this. Okay, so that's where we're going to go with this. I want this to be as interesting as possible, so I have taken some time to actually really sort of process. I'm not here to just tell you what the changes are. I'm here to assess, analyze, and comment in some way into what I'm looking for from the wizard, which is one of my favorite classes. Anyway, let's get started, shall we? Hi, welcome to How to RPG. My name is Fred Weller, and today I want to talk about tabletop role-playing games, and specifically Dungeons & Dragons 6e. I know some of you are going to say, no, Fred, it's 5e. No, Fred, it's 5.5 or 5.25 or 5.24 or whatever the heck it is. I've had a look at the rules enough to really see that, and since I've looked at many different versions of D&D, this is definitely a different game. Like, at its core, and not all the classes are completely different, but there's enough changes taking place. I would say the wizard has changed the least amount, but there's enough changes taking place that we're dealing with a different game. Okay, it's a different animal, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. You just need to be honest about that rather than using it for marketing purposes. So what I want to do is I want to give you a disclaimer first. I have got the document in front of me. I do not have a physical copy of the book, and there's a reason for that. One, people who have been showing a physical copy of the book have been winding up with copyright strikes, which may have been accidental, but I'm not going there. That's just not going to happen for me. So that's not something I want to do. But I will use D&D Beyond, and I will give you a sort of a breakdown disclaimer. I do want to go through the document and show you what I thought was interesting and what stands out. But I will probably spend quite a lot of time just going through my notes and making sure that everything that I made a note of, I actually cover today. Okay, that is really what I'm here to try and do, is to sort of break it down as much as possible, for those of you who are interested. And I know there are some people still playing this game on my channel, so that's fine. And heck, I play 5e, so that's that's a given. Okay, so first off, I would like to say, like, Wizards of the Coast have made a wizard in an attempt to try to improve on what they did before. And to make it clear, this is my disclaimer. I personally don't support Wizards of the Coast anymore as a company, and I don't buy their products anymore. Now, why is that? It's due because of their business practice and the poor quality of the products that I've had to review in the past, and it's become quite frustrating. So I just don't buy their stuff. That means somebody else has to buy it for me, otherwise I just don't do it. But I do this with pretty much all products now. I don't buy any products whatsoever. If they want me to review it and I like it, they can send it to me. That's how I view it. So a patron provided me with access to D&D Beyond, the Digital Player's Handbook for 2024, which we're going to have a look at, so that I could present my honest opinion, not your honest opinion or what you think, but what I think, okay, to make that clear. So patrons are asking me to do that. And I have people who watch my channel who are patrons on Patreon and who are subscribers who want to know about this sort of stuff, and they still play Dungeons & Dragons 5e. And I still play Dungeons & Dragons 5e heavily modified, okay? Like everybody at my table runs 5e differently. I actually play a character more than I Dungeon Master because everybody in my home group not only plays characters, but they're all game masters. They're all dungeon masters, and they've all run games. So I don't have to run a game endlessly and be the forever DM. Okay, so it's a very different sort of mindset, you might say. So my perspective is from both sides of the table. If you think that there are different sides to the table, personally, I don't think there is. What is good for a player should also be good for a dungeon master. And if it's not, there's a problem. I play mostly Dungeons & Dragons 5e, heavily modified, using some Pathfinder rules currently, but everybody at my table runs 5e differently. Like, I make that clear. In the last 10 years, Kirsty's run it differently, Simon's run it differently, I've run it differently, JP's run it differently, I know John runs it differently. Cajun, I don't know too much about, but I know that he is a game master and he has run games before. Okay? And I also play basic or BECME Dungeons & Dragons right now. Like, this is the thing that I tend to do. And I've played a lot of different tabletop role-playing games, so that's my perspective. I'm coming from lots of different areas. Played new games, old games, and like every few months, I'll pick up something else and try something. Like, we've done Shadow Dark, and I like Shadow Dark, probably play that again. I've played Dagger Heart, played Super Atomic, which you probably don't know very much about. That's all right. Morkbork or Merkborky, Porritborg, Star Wars Saga, Fate, Bulldogs, Mage the Ascension, Sagas, which you may not be aware of at all, but it's a very small game. That's all right. Pathfinder and other versions or older versions of D&D that I haven't mentioned. So I do all that. So one of the things I would like to point out is that the wizard, whatever Wizards of the Coast was going to do with the wizard class, it doesn't need to be more powerful, because the wizard is the most powerful class in Dungeons & Dragons and Dungeons & Dragons 5e, full stop. But it still lacks some of the narrative fantasy that people are trying to engage in. So the question is, have they addressed some of those things in this document? And that's what I want to sort of do today, is have a look at that first before I go through everything else. So I'm going to go through the document very quickly, and then I'm going to give you my perspective. Okay, all right, here we go. So first thing that pops up is the artwork is very different. The first image you get, the depiction of the wizard, is I don't dislike it, but when I see it, it reminds me more of a sorcerer than a wizard. I suppose by giving her glasses, that defines her as being a wizard, just a very stylish wizard. Maybe wizards can be stylish, but yeah, I got the distinct feeling, and there's books floating around there and a staff and all the rest. So it's a very different sort of outlook on what the wizard could be. I don't have a problem with that, frankly. Okay, I would prefer to have my wizards young, attractive, and sexy. That's fine with me. No, I'm a guy. It's all good with me. It doesn't have to be an old man. It doesn't have to look like Gandalf or Merlin. Okay, I'm all good with that. So moving on. A lot of this hasn't really changed in terms of what you get initially. You're still getting intelligence. You still got a D6 for your hit points. You still got the same saving throws. Skills, we're going to get into that in a second. There's a change there. They've changed weapon proficiencies a little bit. The armor thing's the same. Starting gear is essentially the same, really. And then there is an attempt to sort of guide you to a certain degree as I was working through this. One of the first things that is very obvious, though, is that there's a lot of errors in the printed version compared to the digital version I've heard, which I find rather frustrating since they've only just put it out. This seems to be a common thing with Wizards of the Coast. They have to, and you don't even find an errata document, which is frustrating. But they've given you advice as to, how to deal with level 1 and multi-classing. They've given you some links in here. I don't know if that's in the book, but there is sort of an indication that, we're looking at multi-classing as well. I'm not a fan of multi-classing. I do it, though. I can see a value to it. I was looking through all of this. Really, the only thing that's different is they've included a prepared spells table or list, like how many you get. Okay, I'm going to comment on that in a second. Spellcasting, essentially the same. There's no real big changes to that. How your spell book works, all that sort of stuff. The spell slots, prepared spells, is now essentially a table. And then as we go down here, the Ritual Adepts, Arcane Recovery, they're essentially the same. We've got Scholar, which you probably never heard of. It's a new thing. The Wizard subclass comes up, and this is the case with all the classes now. It comes up at level 3. Okay, I want to comment more on that. Ability score improvements, level 4 and 8, 12, 16, okay? You got your memorized spell, you got your spell mastery, you got your epic boon at level 19, because all classes get one at level 19 now. And at level 20, you've got signature spells, which is, in my opinion, pretty much the same thing. Now, what I did notice is they have laid out the wizard a little differently. You'll notice we're seeing spells here. Straight after all of that stuff, we don't go into subclasses, we go into the spell list. And they've listed it. Now, I think the lists are a little bit bigger than they were before. So I think they have included a few more options. There's a few spells here that weren't there that are there now. Okay. And there's a couple of spells that I thought would make it onto the spell list for the wizard that are not here. Here we go. Here's our more traditional wizard. Whatever you fancy, man. It's all right with me. Okay. So I was kind of a little bit surprised that they didn't include a couple of spells from Unearthed Arcana, and I'll comment on them in a second. And then we've got the Abjura, and how that sort of works, all their abilities. As I said, I do not want to go through every single feature, because Trent Monk has done this. I believe, was it Colby from D4 has done it. The Dungeon Dudes have done it. Like, everybody's going through and covering that stuff. So I don't really want to worry about this. I don't think that's really necessary. I think it is interesting to have only focused on 4 subclasses, because the wizard used to have quite a lot more than that. Like, it was almost as if we were favoring the wizard so much by giving you so many different options in terms of subclasses for a wizard that everybody else was playing the poor pauper, which is not a good thing to be doing. If you're going to do something like that, okay, maybe just make a supplement that's called the wizard. And I love wizards, okay, so don't get me wrong, I get it, but I think, be fair. I think that's a good thing to have done. Okay, let's go through my thoughts. As I said, this was more about my assessment, my analysis, and what my opinions are of the things that they've done here. That's what you're here for in the first place, right? Okay, so I noticed with weapon proficiencies, they've simplified it and made it a little bit easier to understand and deal with. So rather than getting a list, and the list was not a big list, okay, let's get real, that list was not huge. It just gives you simple weapons. You get simple weapons, whether they're ranged or melee, it doesn't matter, you can just get simple weapons. So it gives you more weapons as options for your wizard, if you want to. I wouldn't say that it's particularly inventive, but I have to give them kudos for the fact that they have managed to figure out how to simplify that section rather than giving a list of different weapons that you can have. The only problem is, I suppose, is you've got to flip to the page that says simple weapons. But let's get real. You were going to flip to that page anyway to figure out how much damage you did with that weapon if you were playing this for the first time. So I think that's actually a pretty good change. Some of the options in the simple weapons for a wizard felt a little bit odd narratively. But ultimately, I think that's pretty clean. I think it's pretty clever. Unless you really wanted something in specific, I think it's actually not bad. It's actually a pretty good design feature. So a very simple thing. The skills, like the skills that you can get, pretty much the number of skills you get is the same. But, you get nature now. You can take an intelligence, knowledge, nature, which you couldn't do before. I think that's a great idea. I think adding in nature was a smart idea. What I'm not sure, I don't understand, since they were very much about giving the players more stuff and leaning more into what the players wanted, is how come they didn't just open up all the skills to a wizard? Does it have to be that if you're going to play a wizard, you must have those things that are only wizardy in terms of skills? Is there no variation whatsoever? So yeah, I think the restricting it to just arcana, history, insight, investigation, medicine, nature, or religion is one thing. And I know you can say yes, but there's backgrounds. Okay, you can get a background, and yeah, but it would be nice to just have opened that up. Is it really a big issue to have done that? If you wanted people to be able to customize, that would have been a simple solution and taken up less space. Choose 2 of any skill you want. maybe including one is Arcana. So you get Arcana and choose one skill, or you get Arcana and pick 2 skills, or something like that. So they didn't do that. I wish they had. That would be my gripe with that one. But in the word, they added a bit more. Starting equipment. You either get a set items, which I looked at, and they're essentially the same thing as they were in the 2014 book, or you get 55 gold pieces. It's about the same. Could have been better or more interesting. I think more interesting is probably the best way to sort of say this, because there's a few things that as a wizard you probably should just start out with rather than having to figure out, oh, I'm going to go through and buy my equipment. Now, I like doing that sort of thing myself, but I know if you were starting out, you may not want to do that sort of thing. So I can understand that, spending 55 gold would be a bit of a drag. And it would be nice to just have a fully kitted out thing. But, I mean, yeah, you got part kit and you got part money. So, it's a compromise in some way. There is now a set number of prepared spells in the wizard table. I think this is a great idea. Rather than, now look, I'm not saying the formula for figuring out how many prepared spells that you have was psychologically traumatic or required a lot of brain power, because it probably didn't. But I think the problem is not so much that. It's the fact that as a wizard, you have the spells that you know, and then from those spells that you know, you have to prepare a subset of that are going to be your prepared spells, because you can't prepare every spell that you know. And then on top of that, you have spell slots. So I think it would have been smart to have just broken it down and said, okay, you have, this is how many prepared spells you get at whatever level. This is how many spells you know. Okay, and this is how many, well, not, is it no prepared spells? No. Yeah, no. I mean, of course, you can learn more as a wizard. That's fine. But to get out of the bat when you get your class, this is how many you would know. I guess that may have caused confusion now that I think about it. If you think about it now, it may have caused confusion later on, particularly as you're picking up spells from other spell books and scrolls. Okay, so forget about that. I think prepared spells on the table is fine. Known spells, well, yeah, that would definitely would have confused things now that I think about it a bit more. The Ritual Adept is essentially the same as the Ritual Casting that you had before. The Arcane Recovery at level 1, also pretty much the same. They're all fine. They were all right. Then the Scholar feature at level 2 gives you expertise in one proficient skill, which I think pretty much doesn't every single class have something like this now? Like every class, apparently this is the solution to giving a class utility. Let's just give them expertise. I don't understand the thinking behind that. It's fine to increase the success of a specific skill. Like, there's nothing wrong with it. It's a good addition, but it really doesn't solve the problem of a wizard who goes and makes or tries to make an Arcana knowledge check and rolls low. Because it can happen. If your dungeon master decides you have to roll the dice, you could roll low. You could roll a 1. And you add that to whatever you got in terms of your modifier, and you might not know very much at all. So unless the game master's sort of home brewing or house ruling something, it doesn't really address that part of the problem, I think. I think Scholar gives you versatility and flexibility, but it doesn't address the Arcana knowledge check. Anyway, it's a small gripe. Anyway, next thing, Wizard subclass gained at level 3, like all the other classes. I think that's smart. I like the fact that they've done this. I would certainly do that if I was homebrewing, which I have been, as many people know. It reduces complexity for beginners. I agree. They've already got a lot of front-loaded abilities at level 1 and 2 as it is. There's quite a lot to deal with, plus spells. So I think that was a smart idea. I know the argument is, but Fred, people just start at level 3 anyway. And no, that's not true. Not every single group out there starts at level 3 or level 5. There are plenty of groups that start at level 1. There are a lot of people who like playing from level 1 to level 5. So it would be pointless to start at level 3 because they only get 2 levels before they can finish up. So yeah, and it does stop it from being front-loaded because there's a tendency, if you get your subclass at level 1 or 2, for that front-loading of that class to be exploited for multi-classing. And I don't think that we should be designing a class, even if I like the wizard, for being exploited for multi-classing. I'm not a fan of multi-classing because it kind of poo-poos or shites all over all the classes in some way. It's by giving you all these different options. It's sort of an optimizer's wet dream, and I come from a home group that are full of optimizers and so forth, but they're older optimizers and power gamers, so it's a little bit different. And even I've been apparently I am a power gamer at times as well. Well, I can say that I like playing wizards, so I suppose that's true, isn't it? It's a powerful class. I just like the complexity of it, so I don't get bored, and I can do lots of stuff. I like that sort of thing. Okay, feats are no longer an option at level 4, 8, 12, and 16. That is bad. I get it that a lot of groups were using feats anyway, but there's plenty of people in my home group who use feats and others who never use feats, and we can still interact with each other. Now you can say, yes, but Fred, there is a feat that's to the ability bump of 2. Yeah, but it's not the best choice. It's not the best choice, because if you look at how the feats have been structured now, you don't have to make any hard choices anymore. The most sensible thing is not to take the feat that is an ability score improvement of 2, or increasing 2 different scores by 1. It is to simply go and take a different feat that gives you a +1 to one of your scores, so you can boost that up a bit more, a bit slower, but you can still boost it up, and you get a whole lot of mechanical features as well. It will keep new people away. Okay, it will certainly make it harder for new people coming into the game, and that's what I really care about the most. I want them to come into the game. I don't want them to be scared off, and it was scary enough as it was. Optimizers will be kept happy. Power gamers will love it, because they always wanted to have more anyway. They wanted to have the ability score improvement and feat. And I think the problem is, in terms of design, is they should never have made it an option that you had to take the ability score improvement or a feat. What they should have done is taken the feat system, made it optional, and used the feat system to replace a feature from your subclass. I think that was the solution rather than what they're currently doing. So maybe they'll try that in 10 years. Who knows? Memorize spell at level 5 lets you swap out a prepared spell during a short rest. Now here's the problem for me. My experience playing with a wizard, there are times where it might come up, but I think it's mostly pointless as a feature. Like you have to take a short rest. You might as well take a long rest. If you can take a short rest, the good chance that you can take a long rest anyway. So why make that a feature? The other thing is that wizards have so many spells. Like if you don't have exactly the spell you need, you've probably got another spell that will be good enough, and certainly once you get past level 5, you're going to have a lot of spells to choose from. The other thing is wizards are ritual casters. They can cast ritual spells. They get, like, their spell list is just full of ritual tag spells. Like there's a bunch of them. And if you're playing a wizard, one of the first things you do is you tend to, because you've only got to use so many spell slots, is you go and select as many of the ritual spells as you possibly can. That is the smart thing to do. And yeah, so I think memorize spell, yeah, it's you get something. A kind of a pointless feature, I think. I don't think I like it very much. Next, you get an epic boon feat at level 19. Okay, like everybody does. The problem is it's only, really you could get those at level 20 or after level 20, right? You could get them at level 20 if your dungeon master was using them. You could get them after level 20 if you continued playing on. It's a small level of change. It's not a big level change. Most people are never going to get to level 19. Myself, I've played from level 1 to 16. I've dungeon mastered from level 1 to 16 and to level 20 for 5e. So I play the high-end game as well, but I don't think most people are ever going to come in contact with it. So, okay, it's a small change in terms of level, and a lot of those epic level feats, they're not very good for a high-level character. They're designed for the low-level game. They're designed for the combat game, and if you've ever played high-level D&D, you'll know that the game is completely different once you go past about level 10. It's a different animal completely. So the things that you need are not being able to hit more, do more damage. Frankly, those things are less useful to you. Getting more spells, I mean, I suppose that's nice, but really it's not what you're looking for at a high level. You're looking for other stuff. But, there you go. We've got it. There's a huge gap I did notice in the wizard's progression in terms of the character level from level 5 to level like 18, 19. I'd say level 5 to 18, really. Unless you're counting subclasses, which we should be counting those features as well. But it does feel like there's a great huge hole. And I think that's because of the subclass system. And since the subclass system starts at level 3 and really sort of peters out roughly, level... Oh, I can't even remember. Subclasses peter out at level 16, isn't it? Something like that. Yeah. I'm pretty sure. Well, is it 16 or yeah, no, something like that. I think it's level 14, isn't it? Level 14. You don't get anything after that. Okay. All right. The other thing is like spell mastery at level 18. It's pretty much the same. Okay, I get a few more spells that that are prepared. Okay. Signature spells again. Oh, a few more free spells. More spells that I can be prepared and that I can cast like once and then I have to take a rest. It's really the same as before. I don't think... the problem is that play testing from, beyond level 10 probably was not very significant. And level 18 to 20, like those sorts of features, I mean, they're all right, but how often are you going to be casting Fireball at level 3 or a level 3 spell in the first place? Unless, of course, you decided that whatever you're facing is completely pointless. So you might as well just sit back and let everybody else do the work, and just wait until it's actually time for you to do something important. They've never been very impressive for high-level play in terms of the features. I've never been very impressed by them. They've not changed, so they haven't taken anything away from you. They just haven't given you anything cool, as I said, I really like the spell list being included with the wizard. I think I always felt that it was strange to include it at the back of the book, along with the spells, because you had to kind of flip through there. So it's a good idea. Now, I would also like to point out that the wizard still suffers from something that I've had issues with for a long time. But I have two ways of thinking about this. The wizard is still a horribly complicated and complex spellcaster to operate, because you have the known spells, prepared spells, the spell slots. But I think it should really stay that way for a wizard, because the wizard for me in Dungeons and Dragons is a Vancian spellcaster. Out of all of the spellcasters, I don't believe that the warlock should operate using a Vancian system. I don't really think that the sorcerer should operate with a Vancian system. In fact, I don't think clerics, druids, or any other of the spellcasters should use the Vancian system. But the wizard, that's kind of intrinsic to the wizard. I almost feel like that was part of the metal. Part of the magic user was it as a Vancian spellcaster. And I suppose you could say, yes, but if you're going to have the Vancian system for the wizard, it should be for everybody. Well, no, I don't think it needs to be. I think you can have different systems. Magic is magic. Do you know what I mean? But not reducing the complexity of this, even though I would prefer to keep it the same, will make it harder as a choice for new people. And I acknowledge that. And I think the problem here is Wizards of the Coast design team made the wrong choice. They should have made the wizard easier and removed some of the Vancian system from it. I think the Wizards of the Coast team should have done that. And I also think this is a failing of myself to understand, and me being attached to a tradition, that I think that the wizard should stay this way. And I was thinking about the just as leading up to this, and I'm like, this is a problem for Wizards of the Coast design team. This is a problem in my headspace. And I could see, if they changed it, I could see there being a huge outcry by silly people like myself that could not get past the fact that the wizard was no longer a Vancian spellcaster, which is probably why they never made that change. So if the rest of us can get past that, we actually might be able to get more people into the game who can play a wizard rather than having to wait. Instead, they're going to go and play a sorcerer. Really, is that really that much easier? Or a warlock, which is another thing, or a cleric, or a bard. Oh my god. Okay, so yeah, still a problem as far as I'm concerned. The subclasses have had small adjustments. Like all the subclasses have had just little adjustments. Some have been kind of rebuilt completely, but most features are stronger and improved, as far as I can tell. Most of the subclasses are structured in some way like this. They either give you extra prepared spells, which I suppose that's fine, since if you're using a Vancian magic system, having more prepared spells can be useful. It's not a bad thing, but it's not very creative. Giving you extra cantrips or being able to switch out cantrips. Yes, I can see there being a benefit to that, but it's like, okay, sure. Why not just, if you're going to give us an extra cantrip, just put it in the table. Don't make it a special feature of a subclass or even the class itself. Like, and you often see you get this cantrip extra on top of your normal cantrips. I'm like, but you're doing that for pretty much all the subclasses anyway, so why not just forget about that as the feature and think of something else. And then of course they will give you things that are, you get a spell that doesn't use up a spell slot. And it has like a limited uses per times in a, before you have to go and take a short rest or a long rest or something like that. There are usually, at least though, still one or two standout features for all the subclasses. And I'm not going to break them down as much as you might think. The Abjurer, I think Spellbreaker, pretty strong feature. Does it fit with the Abjurer? Yes, it does. But I'm still of the opinion that the shield spell needs to be heavily nerfed or removed, but counterspell should be just completely removed from the game. Even though I always take counterspell if I'm playing a wizard, but it wrecks the dungeon master's fun, and it wrecks the player's fun if the dungeon master uses it. And if the players can use it, then the dungeon master should be able to use it as well. Otherwise, it's a one-sided game. Like, you wind up with a game where you're throwing spells but nothing's happening. It is terrible. It's a fun-killing spell, that counterspell. It really is. You need things to happen, and all that does is shut the game down. And then you also have spell resistance for the Abjurer. And, it's a level 14 feature. I think it's probably would have been more sensible to have included it a little bit sooner, because I don't really feel like it's suitable for level 14, but that would be me in terms of the way I think. I don't like relying on dice mechanics for higher level features. I think that's a mistake. Those feel more like low level features. The Diviner's Portent has always been very strong and effective. And it's I would say it's where it needed to be. It's what it is, but it breaks the meta. It's like a meta game feature. Like it, you think in terms of the narrative, it doesn't make an awful lot of sense. It's just really strong. If you roll low numbers, roll high numbers, take those numbers, replace the your player's low number with a high number from your dice. Well, you can't replace it. You have to do it before they roll the dice. So, give the players the high numbers, give the dungeon master the low numbers. Yep, that's the usual trick. You don't want mid-range numbers, though, if you can help it, right? And then the third eye. I thought the third eye was reasonable as a feature for the Diviner, because it's not really a combat thing. I mean, it could be, but, it's got more uses outside of that, and it feels more like it's a high-level feature, I guess. And then the Evoker's Sculpt Spell. I've always liked Sculpt Spell. So Evoker, Sculpt Spell, fine. Overchannel is, it's a power. You boost the damage output, but it's still damage at high level when really the wizard never needed to do more damage. So there's nothing wrong with it. It will be useful and it will do a lot of damage, but it's not really what you need at that point. You know what I mean? Not a nerf, but it's there. The illusionists improved illusions. I looked at that and I thought, well, that's quite clever. I like the idea that you could literally cast minor illusion every single time as a bonus action. Um, but I'm not a fan of bonus action spells, and I know some people feel like if you can cast 2 spells, that's not a big deal on your turn. I think that is. I think if you're playing a spellcaster, you will tend to take up more time unless you have a lot of attacks that you have to make as a martial class. And this is essentially doing that very thing. Like, you are now going to be doing 2 spells, not 1 spell, pretty much every single time you take your turn, because that would be the most sensible thing to do, right? That is the way in. So it's a good feature. I just don't know that it's going to really. I mean, Wizards always took a long time to play as it is, unless you planned everything out in advance, which you should be doing anyway. And then Illusionary Reality, also a very good spell. Illusionary Reality is. I like the idea a lot, actually. I feel that it has more narrative. It's got some mechanical function to it. It is reliant on Dungeon Masters, but all rules should be reliant on Dungeon Masters. So, yeah, okay. I think the Illusionist did a pretty good job in terms of those features. The other ones, yes, there are other things there that I could mention, but those are the things that stood out the most for me in terms of, how useful were they, what makes them stand out from everything else. Those are the things that I like the most. Okay. I would also like to point out that really, nothing beyond level 4 is particularly impressive or useful to a wizard class outside of some key abilities in the subclasses. There really isn't anything outside of, you get more spells, or you level up as you level up, or you get a new feat. Like, there really isn't a lot going on with the class itself. At its core, it's very empty beyond level 4. Now, why did I not say level 5 after Memorize Spell? Because I think Memorize Spell is a nothing burger, in my opinion. I mean, it's useful. It's just it's not that exciting. Next, the level 10 features aren't particularly useful for high level play. If you've ever played beyond level 10 and played between level 10 and level 20, which I have, you'll know that almost all of those features aren't the sorts of things that you really need, or the things that you envisage your wizard being able to do. That's the other thing to consider. The only thing I would say is the exception is getting that epic boon at level 19. And of course, the epic boon I would pick would be True Sight. Now, of course, there are some other ones that you could pick as a wizard, for sure. But True Sight is too good to pass up. And it's very much a high-level feature. It makes perfect sense. You can use it inside combat. You can use it outside of combat. It's like you've got the perception of a dragon now. That is a high-level feature. That makes much more sense to me. But all of those other epic boons that you could select at level 19, I could live without them. As I said, the wizard art is certainly far more sexy, a bit more varied. Some of it I like, some of it I don't really like that much. I think the first opening image of the wizard was really impressive. Like, I really liked what they had done there. I thought that was impressive. I'm not a huge fan of the image for the Abjura myself. The Diviner is all right. I don't know if the Diviner is it a wizard because she's wearing glasses, or because she's got a book strapped to her. The Evoker's all right. Yeah, I don't know why we need to have the big hat on top. This one obviously didn't have glasses, so is it definitely not a sorcerer? And then the illusionist looks more like I guess a young girl who's giving a magic show to her parents. I get the impression. I'm not saying it's bad art. It's just it's not really what I was looking for myself. I was kind of looking for something else if I could help it. Now, what do I think they could have done that they haven't put here that has been around before? Well, where is the ability to create a new spell? Like that used to be a thing. You could create new spells, and people did. And they had in the Unearthed Arcana modify and create spell. Now, I don't suggest that you make this a level 1, level 2 spell. It should be like a level 9 spell. Like you make your own spell, but you know, to do that, it's level 9. Or there's a special feature, you know, at a high level where you get to create your own spell and put your name on it. Okay? And it can be a level 9. I mean, it's not, if it has sign off by the Dungeon Master, it probably should. It should have a provisor saying, with the Dungeon Master saying, you cannot make a level 9 spell and label it as a level 1 spell. That would be a bad thing. But creating your own spell is definitely a fantasy and a narrative that I think myself and a lot of other people want from the wizard, even if it is at high level, and even if you may never get to use it because you never play high enough. But it's not there. It's gone. It's just disappeared. So I think that's a shame. Why don't I have the ability to have a permit or build a mage tower? Like you literally in AD&D, you got the permission to build a mage tower or own a mage tower, but usually to build a mage tower because there's not that many of them around. So you could do so because you were given permission, and you know you had the resources, and away you go. Now you can say, like Fred, it doesn't need to be part of the character progression. It can be part of the narrative. You know, let dungeon masters and players figure that out. Sure, they can. But it was actually tied, and there's precedence for it, tied to the class itself. Okay, and I think that was a good thing to do, and them taking it away and not including it back in there, I think that's a mistake. I think they should have done something with that, because that's another thing as a person who likes playing wizards that I would like to do, and I would like that connected to my progression. Even if I have to go and do something to get that feature to operate and work, to get the mage tower, even if I have to go on a quest or complete something, that's all right. But I want the option to be able to do that. Do you know what I mean? Where's the chance to make a magic item at a high level? How many people who play wizards have ever come to the point where they want to make a magic item? Not a magic weapon, but a magic item. And then they have to go through the rigmarole of like, does the game master allow for the creation of magic items? And I am all for dungeon masters modifying and changing and restricting magic in their worlds. That is cool. But it would be nice at high level, since frankly by about level 16 or 17 it doesn't matter if somebody has a magic item. You know, magic items can be good, they can be bad, they can be story ideas. A +1, +2, +3 at that level for even for a wizard isn't going to mean very much, because it doesn't matter. Most of the time things are going to actually hit, because your modifiers are so high, and even though you're dealing with bound accuracy, the monsters aren't bound by any accuracy at all. They're bound, yeah, but you guys aren't. As the players, you can pump your armor class up and your attack bonuses up the caboo. Like, there's so many different ways to do it. So yeah, I would have liked the idea of being able to have a point where, yeah, you can make or go on a quest to get a specialized magic item. I think that would have been a smart move. There's no ability to make a spell, well, more abilities to make spells permanent. In previous versions of the game, of D&D, you could actually make far more spells permanent. Now, right now, as written in the player's handbook, there are very few spells that you can make permanent. And I'm not suggesting that every single spell in the spell book for a wizard or in the player's handbook should be able to be made permanent. That is not what I'm saying. But at least broaden it out a little bit. Give them the option to do something like that, particularly for high-level play. This is high-level play stuff. Again, another thing that bugs me is there used to be a thing called followers or hirelings, but followers were really the word. Hirelings are you hire them, you buy their services. Followers followed you because of your notoriety, your fame, you're famous, and I think followers being included into the class would have been a nice idea. I'm not suggesting followers be dragged around to do the fighting for you and be used as red shirts like in Star Trek, not at all. But at least some sort of apprentice or follower system would have been nice to include into the character progression, or even some guild membership. It's not included there. There's nothing like that, and I think that's a real huge shame. I would have liked to have seen something more like that, just to change things up and to sort of fulfill that narrative, like the narrative fantasy of playing a wizard. There are certain things when you play a wizard that you want, and when you don't get them, it's a bit of a bugger. It really is. So yeah, that was sort of my feedback on the wizard. Now I'm, for those of you who probably already know, I'm probably going to do more of this in the future. This isn't the only time I'm going to come back and talk about these classes. I've done one today. There are 11 more to go. A few of you are aware that I've been working my way through and rebuilding some of the classes, and I'm probably going to keep doing that. There are a lot of things that I could say about the spells that the wizard can use, but it would take way too long. I honestly think that other people have done a far better job than I possibly could. And when you get a chance to have a look at the class itself and the player's handbook, if you are interested, if you're not, that's fine. Then yeah, let me know what you think. But I'm probably not going to use this. To be completely honest, it doesn't have enough that it offers me that I would be excited. So I have two choices, okay? It's definitely an improvement in some way. It hasn't really done enough to inspire me to shift from playing Dungeons & Dragons 5e 2014. Really not enough. So what would I do? I'm probably going to go play a different system like Shadow Dark, which is actually narrower, but I'm probably just going to redo all the classes myself rather than waiting. I could wait another 10 years and somebody will put out another attempt at it and it doesn't quite do what I want it to do. So just why wait? Just do it myself. That's what I want to do. Yeah, and that's what I'll continue to do, probably for all the classes. And my home group are sort of like, Fred, if you've got the time, sweet, that's exactly what we want. So all I'm doing is building it the way I want it and the way my group wants it. And surprisingly, the way I think and how my group thinks are very, very similar. Not completely, but very, very similar. Anyway, hopefully this was interesting to you. I will do some Q&A in a second, but I just want to shut off my monologue because I've been going for about 50 minutes. So hopefully this was interesting and useful to you. Thank you to all my patrons. Thank you to all my subscribers. Yeah, so go check it out, see what you think if you're interested. And hey, till next time, keep rolling those 20s. Okay, let's go through chat. I'm going to give you 10 minutes and then I'm going to go. So if you have a question, I'd go #question if you want it to stand out. Otherwise, I'm going to miss it, okay? Otherwise, I'm going to go through the chat very, very fast. Hello, Fred Hoover. Fred Hoover's patron. Thanks for being here, mate. I do appreciate you showing up for just about every single live stream that I do. Hello, Wizards and Warp Drives, also a patron. Hi Nacho. How you doing, mate? Yes, and you will know more about Super Atomic in the future. We'll get to that. That is going to be a fun one. I have convinced the person who's designing Super Atomic to make another RPG that is not for a superhero, but for a fantasy world. I don't know when that'll happen, but it will eventually. We'll make sure. Don't you worry. It'll happen. I've got a couple of people who will help with that. I'm aware you made a Goliath monk recently. It's OP. Yeah, I saw what you're posting up, and I'm like, oh, okay. How are the monsters going to contend with that? The monk has gone from being not a very good class by a lot of standards that people have to say, commented on, to being maybe the most powerful of all the classes. Certainly the martial classes. Maybe not the wizard as such, but definitely it's pretty powerful now. More complex, more better. Negative space reasons. More complex, more better. Shy X, hello. How are you, Shy X? I still like Necromancer Wizard and the shenanigans with that. Okay, all right, cool. I mean, whatever whatever you get the joy from, as long as you're not killing somebody else's fun, it's all good. Yeah, I like the old, you only change class once and you never go up in original class again. Yeah, well, I also thought it was funny, weird that they've got this ability where you can change out a cantrip. So cantrips are things that you learn, right, as a wizard, and you can change them out with is it a short rest or a long rest? I think it's a long rest. Yes, it's a long rest. I'm pretty sure. I'm like, hang on, isn't a cantrip the thing that you just memorized, just learned? So why is it you can just change that out? I can change that out. I don't understand that. But then I use retraining in my group. I don't say to people, oh, if you don't like the way you built your character, you can't change it ever again. It's a complicated system. So I've always allowed people, as long as it's not during gameplay, before or after, you can change stuff. You keep the same name, you keep your gear, and you can change all the rest of the other stuff. I could care less. But that's just how I do it. Yeah, well, look, yeah, I get it. Look, you know how I feel about some of the things from older versions of D&D. I counterspell your healing word. Yes, that's not a fun thing to wind up having happen. I can guarantee that. Um, after thinking about it for a long time, I think shield shield something, shield cell, shield cell. I don't know what is that. What does that mean? Spell should be a high level spell. Yeah, it probably should be a high level spell. But if you look at the shield from version 3.5, it gave you a +1 bonus and it stopped magic missiles. That was it. It was not a +5 bonus. It's 5 times better than it was before. 5 times. And I hate to say it, it wasn't. I don't believe it was a reaction to cast that spell. I don't think Shield in 3.5 was a reaction spell. I think it was you had to cast it. So you had to pre-plan, expecting that you were going to be hit with something that was going to do a lot of damage. And I'm pretty sure that's how it used to work. Let me just have a quick... See if I've got the book in front of me. I've got all of the player handbooks in front of me, by the way, people. Shield. It's a P. When an S. SH, right? I think I still remember how to spell. My brain is definitely... Here we go. So we're into shield. Yes, yeah, so shield level 1 spell. But this is all it used to do, right? You could stack it and protects. It's a +4 bonus to armor class. Oh, so it was actually not a +1. It was a +4. Still a very strong spell. What was the action? Casting time 1 standard action. It was not a reaction. You actually had to pre-plan. So we never used shield that much, even though a +4 bonus is good. You couldn't do it as a reaction, so it's become a reaction and you get a +5 bonus. Like it's too much of a go-to, you know? How does the wizard ever die? How does they ever go down? Or, you know, even if they don't die, how do they go on their face and at least have a little nap, a dirt nap for a little while, before they wind up getting up and probably firing on a fireball at somebody? Buckaroo Bonsai, hello. I like the name, by the way. I also like the movie. Increase the video volume, please. Can barely hear it. So here's the problem. It's not me at my end. It is YouTube that is doing this. They've been messing with the sound for a long time. And so everything that was set up before has been messed up really, really badly. Okay, and I can't really, if I adjust it at my end, and it's been changing every few days. So it would mean I would constantly be having to make adjustments. I've actually got my audio mixer at maximum volume. Would you believe it? So that's a problem. What you will find, I've discovered, is if you're not listening to it on your cell phone and you're on a desktop computer, it's going to be easier to replay it and hear it at the volume that you need. If you're on your phone, because they do this occasionally, they mess with the volume of the phones. And then YouTube also messes with the volume of any kind of live stream or recording. And it's a very frustrating thing. So if you are frustrated and you don't want to watch, I get it. But yeah, that is the problem. If you're on a phone, it is YouTube at their end that is screwing around with stuff. It's not at my end. You're off to bed. No problems, negative space. I've got Matthew here. Yeah. YouTube has been messing with the audio for weeks, by the way, people, if you were unaware. Oh, we've got Chris here. Hang on, let me get here. Almost there. Matthew, I like Mr. Huber's idea of both rolling for spells and game search for exact spells that DM moderates. Yeah. Look. Creating your own spells it's a huge feature. This is why there are named spells in D&D. And as a wizard player, you want to be able to get to a high enough level that you can create your own spell. It's part and parcel of that. And building it into the character advancement would have been a smart idea. Do you know what I mean? All it requires is to make sure it's a high enough level and that you're giving the dungeon master some control to make sure that people aren't making something that does a 9th level effect as a level 1 spell or a cantrip, because that might be a thing. Spending gold, yes. XP, I'm not too sure we need to worry about doing that sort of thing, but at least give them the option to do that. No, there isn't really a price tag on magic items, and 5e has been around for 10 years, yes, but it's really, in its iterations, 5e's been around for 12 years because the playtest was 2 and a bit years anyway. The permanent spell used to be part of making custom magic items. Yes, absolutely, that's exactly it. This is an AD&D idea. All right, so Chris, what do you got here? Hey, it's Chris from Deus Ex Machina. I just got my copy. Looking forward to seeing what you need to do to update Ultramodern 5 to 2024. Yeah, because everybody's going to have to do that, right? Spoiler, it's not much, laugh out loud. Look, there's a bit of wording. I think there's 4 core mechanics in the game right now that I think are significant enough changes that it would mess with you a little bit. In terms of how the wizard works, they moved the archetype levels around a little bit. Some of them are changed a little bit. The wizard's probably one of the few classes that got minuscule adjustments or changes to them. And there are some changes. There's not a lot. Yeah, I really think that the wizard having that in-game ability to create a spell at high level, that is the fantasy. I always know that that's what I wanted. It's why when I was discussing it with Simon and JP and John, and Cajun's a lot younger, so he was unaware of it, but when he heard about it, he's like, yes, that's awesome. Let's have the ability to create our own spell at high level. And since my group usually we play from about level 1 to 16 for most campaigns. 1 to 16, I have gone from 1 to 20. It's a pretty common thing for my group to do. I will be running games very shortly, and I'll be going from level 1 to 10, but after that, I'll probably go from level 1 to 20, and I'll be using a different way of scaling. I know you've got XP counting and you have milestones. I will be leveling up my group every session. So every session will be an adventure, and at the end of every session, they will go up another level. Because it's the only way you can play test high level characters. If you don't do that, then you're never going to get there. Weapon mastery, epic boons, that's about it. Yeah, weapon mastery that's a dog of a feature. It's a terrible idea. It's going to make the game so slow. Epic boons are not very epic. Some of them are a little bit better. I just still don't like them very much. They're not great. The rogue looks, they didn't mess. I don't think they messed with the rogue too much. I think they were scared. They were scared of the consumers. I mean, class have been tweaked, but core mechanics look about the same. And I was promising. Yeah, there are some. Look, they could have made more changes, but there's enough. Look, if I look at the difference between what they've done now and the rules that went from version 3 to 3.5, this here had significantly fewer changes from version 3 to 3.5. This version is much different. Much, much different. There's a lot of changes going on. Okay. All right, I'm going to end this poll, and I'll be curious to see what we've got. Do you like the new Wizard class changes for Dungeons & Dragons 2024? Yes, 38%. Undecided, 28%. Fair enough. Just watching, 28%. And no, 4%. Okay. So I'm probably one of those 4% people where they just didn't go far enough for me. You know what I mean? I see if 2024 Artificer steps on the... look, they haven't even talked about the Artificer. I don't think that's likely to be a thing. Not unless they release an Eberron book. I don't think that's going to happen. The Artificer is... I mean, they said it was supposed to be for anything, but that was really just pressure from people playing, D&D Adventurers League. I'm going to do the Monk, I think. I think I want to do the Monk next week. I've looked at the polls that I put up, and I think the polls for the Wizard and the Monk are doing pretty well. So I think I'm going to cover the Monk because there's a lot going on there. A lot. Some good changes too. It's weird to say. It's weird to say that the Monk has gone through so many changes. It's literally gone from the class that nobody particularly liked that much to the class that everybody wants to play now. It's funny. Anyway, huge thank you to everybody who's been here. I do appreciate your time. Thanks to my patrons. I want to thank DS Machina for your comments, Fred Huber, Shy X, Negative Space, Matthew, Buckaroo Bonsai, of course. I said Fred Huber, didn't I? Yes, I think I did. And Wizards and Warp Drives. Yes, I'll be back, but not for a few days. So all the best with whatever you're doing. So wherever you are in the world, whether it be the morning, the afternoon, or the night, please look after yourself, your family, and your friends. Be nice to your neighbours. And yes, I will be returning to comment on more of the classes for Dungeons & Dragons 2024. And yes, I will be remastering the classes and continuing that process because I have no choice. It's a done deal. I've already started that process. That's going to happen. And until next time, keep rolling.